Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, the Senior Internal Audit Advisor for Audit Board. Welcome to another in my continuing series on Agents of Change, where I'm joined by leading practitioners in internal audit, risk management, and compliance to talk about what it takes to be a change agent in organizations of the 21st century. I'm joined today by Al Mawji. Al has a deep internal audit experience of almost 20 years, including the last 10 as the Senior Vice President of Risk and Assurance at Brookfield Asset Management. Welcome, Al. So happy to have you join me today.
Thank you, Richard. Pleasure to be here.
As I think about the world that we're trying to navigate through, these last couple of years have just been truly insane in terms of risk dynamics. The velocity and volatility of risk has never been greater. It seems like every time we think we have it figured out, there's a new risk that zooms in from the periphery that we didn't see coming. In some ways, change is part of the landscape, and there's really almost no way to avoid that. From your experience in leading internal audit function in the financial services field, how have you and your team navigated the kind of change that the pandemic and all of the risks of the last year have brought?
I think by having a trusted dialogue with stakeholders, to be that trusted advisor, to be able to perform risk assessments in a real-time scenario, to be able to have the conversations with our stakeholders around what they're facing, to try to understand how we can walk the walk and really put ourselves in their shoes to understand the risks that they're facing, so that we can add some value to be able to help them to navigate those risks. Although we'll never own the risks, our role is very clear that we should be able to be a trusted advisor and to be able to change our approach and give relevant assurance at relevant points in time. As risks evolve and change management strategies are put into place, we should flex our audit plans accordingly to be able to give assurance over that change management process. Yeah. And we should be flexible in that approach. And I think that that's the way that we have faced not only the last couple of years with the pandemic, but really the last 20 years or so, where we've faced, quite frankly, quite unprecedented change in the political landscape, in social demographics, in technology. And these things are evolving at, as you said, at an insane rate.
Yes, yes. You know, in my book, Agents of Change, which was published last year, I argue that internal auditors of the 21st century have to be more adept at helping their organizations change. They have to be change agents. The internal audit team has to be. And I define change agents as those internal auditors who are catalysts for transformational ideas that help the organization not only protect the value in the organization, but to help create value. What's your assessment of that? Do you agree that that's an appropriate role for internal audit?
Yes, I absolutely do, Richard. I think as internal auditors, we work across the organization from an enterprise level all the way down to a process level. And you know, we sit at the intersection of risks, and so therefore it's natural for us to be able to have that horizon and enterprise level view of how risks are evolving, and that interconnectedness of risks as well, which is very powerful to our stakeholders and to management and to the board.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, one of the things that I put forward in the book is that we really will never be seen as credible change agents unless we're willing to change within our own organization. So as a chief audit executive for these last 10 years, how have you tried to drive change in the way internal audit operates? Are there success stories that come to mind as far as the way that you helped the organization transform its internal audit approach?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways. I think the first way is with our people, and it's allowing our people to have that empathy around what people are going through today in that unprecedented level of change. And that translates directly into our work around our risk assessments and having that ongoing risk assessment protocol, but engaging our stakeholders on a frequent basis. I think what we found in the last few years is that we've engaged our stakeholders much more frequently. In the past, it may have been only a couple of times a year where we would revisit risks. And now it seems to be every discussion that we have risks on the table and that ongoing dialogue of risks. I think another way is through technology and data analytics, the sharing of data. That's something for internal audit that we've been doing for many years, and we've been quite fortunate to be able to have that access to data because we work across the organization and we validate our findings and our observations with data. I think one of the ways that we add value back to the organization is by bringing those protocols and those systems that we have built to allow the organizations to make business decisions based on that data. And they get a great degree of comfort that that data is relied on by internal audit and has gone through rigorous validation protocols. And so that has given internal audit significant credibility in the business.
That's great. Yeah, I believe, and I make the argument again in the book that we have to be more forthcoming in helping others to understand what we can do for them. That, as I say, secret agents can't be change agents. So you can't kind of keep what you do within the walls of internal audit. How have you, in your years as a chief audit executive, how successful do you feel like you've been, and any ideas on what led to success as far as helping the stakeholders, the board, management, understand the role of internal audit and what its potential is in helping them?
Yeah, I always answer this question as the trusted advisor. And I do get asked that question sometimes by our board as to what we believe our role is. Yeah. We clearly have a mandate, we have an audit charter, an internal audit charter, but it goes way beyond that. I think this is more about how we engage with management, how we continue to be relevant as an internal auditor in our profession today, and it's how we demonstrate sound business principles. In the world that we live in as an internal auditor, we're continually focused on how to address and manage a risk or what could go wrong. And I think what we need to be able to do is be able to have a balance of how to guide the organization in the best principles to be able to manage those risks with sound business judgment, and that is something that I believe that is a part of our role as an internal auditor.
You know, I wrote this book, but before we started writing, we took time to listen, and we surveyed more than 600 chief audit executives around the world and asked them, from their experience, what skills, what attributes does it take to be a change agent in internal audit? And we came back and synthesized it down to 4 broad attributes. That you have to have a strong business acumen, you have to be relationship centric, that you have to be have a strategic mindset, and that you have to be innovative. So those 4 things: business acumen, strategic mindset, relationship centric, and innovative. Do you think that captures what it takes from a broad standpoint to be a change agent?
Yeah, look, I think that does encapsulate it very well. I'd probably just enhance maybe the relationship management part of it, and this is where we focus very much with our people on the theme of empathy and humility. You know, our role is to serve the organization, and it's to support the organization as a trusted advisor. And so I think one of the key skills and attributes that we should be very conscious of demonstrating in all aspects of our work is that trust, that empathy, around how the business is changing, and the humility of being able to know when to step back and when to let the owner of a risk manage a risk, and give them time to manage that risk as well.
We can be change agents in terms of bringing ideas, but we can't be the ones who implement the change, I think is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I would ask you one last question. Looking ahead, if you put your crystal ball in front of you and you looked ahead, what do you think lies in the future for the internal audit profession? Is there something you think we absolutely must get right to be successful as a profession? What advice would you give?
I think it's the theme of relevance and maintaining that relevance with what is happening with the world today. There are a number of macro level trends, mega trends as we call them, and one today is around rising inflation. That has a clear impact on everything. Seems to be just more expensive, especially so in the last couple of months. Mm-hmm. Filling up gas in my tank has just got insane. Right. This has an impact on everybody, and in the workplace especially. As prices rise, wages are not rising. The pressures on people, and if we look at the macro level trends around urbanization rates, in the last 20 years, nearly 60% of the world's population lives in urban cities. We will see organizations face an unprecedented level of fraud risk as technology enhances and more and more processes are reliant on systems. There is greater level of fraud that may occur as well. So I think that as a profession, we need to be able to look at those types of trends and try to chart how that will impact an organization and what sort of risks will be impacted for us to be able to guide the organizations of how to manage those. I think that's one way of continuing to be relevant.
Wow. So right. I couldn't agree with you more. Al, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your perspectives on being an agent of change. Obviously, you've done some great work and in the roles that you've played, and I look forward to following your fortunes in the future and see where your approach, your desire to be a trusted advisor will take you. Thank you again for doing this.
Thank you, Richard.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Richard Chambers, Senior Internal Audit Advisor for Audit Board.